The chipped mug warmed my hand, the lukewarm coffee doing little to soothe the ice forming in my veins. I stared out at the pre-dawn gray, the city lights still twinkling like mocking eyes. She wasn't home again. This time, it wasn't a late night at the office, a girl's night out, or a sudden bout of insomnia that drove her to wander the streets. This time I knew, the gut feeling, the whispered phone calls, the averted gaze, that all coalesced into a sickening certainty. Amelia, my wife of 10 years, was having an affair. I'd hired a private investigator a month ago, the creeping suspicion gnawing at me until I couldn't ignore it any longer. He delivered his report just yesterday. Crisp photos, times, locations, even the name of the man. J. Ashton, her colleague, the one with the slick back hair and the laugh that grated on my nerves. They were meeting at the Grand Meridian Hotel, room 602. My initial reaction was a primal roar, a desire to smash something, anything. But the cold fury that followed was more potent, more calculating. I wouldn't become a cliché, a cuckolded husband throwing a tantrum. I'd be methodical, precise. I would dismantle their little fantasy brick by brick. I poured the rest of the coffee down the drain, the bitter taste mirroring the bile rising in my throat. It was time. I arrived at the Grand Meridian, the opulent lobby a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside me. I walked to the front desk, my heart hammering against my ribs. Room service, I said, my voice remarkably steady. Order for room 602. The young man behind the desk smiled politely. Certainly, sir. What would you like to send up? My smile was colder than the marble beneath my feet. A single red rose, I said, and a handwritten note. I handed him the note, a small folded piece of paper containing only 4 words. I know about Jace. I paid, tipped generously, and retreated to the lobby bar, ordering a stiff drink. The wait was agonizing, each tick of the clock amplifying the tension. Then, after about 15 minutes, I saw it, a flurry of activity at the elevators, followed by Amelia and Jace storming out, their faces pale, their eyes dart around like trapped animals. They hadn't even bothered to check out. I finished my drink, the ice clinking softly against the glass, a small, satisfying sound in the echoing silence. I followed them out, maintaining a discreet distance. They hailed a cab, their hurried whispers barely audible above the city's din. I followed in my own car, the predator stalking its prey. They went to Jace's apartment, a sleek, modern building in the uptown district. I parked across the street and watched, the city lights reflecting in my cold, impassive eyes. I waited and waited. The confrontation took place the next day at Amelia's office. I timed it perfectly, arriving just as she and Jace were returning from lunch, their faces still edged with the strain of the previous night. I walked straight toward them, my footsteps echoing in the hushed office corridor. "Amelia," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a shard of glass. Heads turned, whispers rippled. Amelia froze, her face draining of color. Jace, ever the smooth operator, tried to bluster. "Look, this is a private matter." I cut him off with a single, swift punch to the jaw. He stumbled back, clutching his face in surprise. The whispers escalated into gasps. "Private?" I laughed, a harsh, hollow sound. "You think sneaking around behind my back, in my bed, is private?" Amelia was trembling, her eyes wide with fear. "Daniel, please," she whispered. "Let's talk about this somewhere else." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "It's over." I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there amidst the wreckage of their deceit, the curious stares of their colleagues burning into their backs. The divorce was messy, protracted, and emotionally draining. Amelia tried to apologize, to explain, to beg for forgiveness. But the damage was done. The trust, the foundation of our marriage, had been shattered beyond repair. Jace, predictably, denied everything. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that Amelia had misinterpreted his friendly gestures. His colleagues, however, weren't fooled. The whispers continued, the sidelong glances, the subtle ostracization, his reputation. carefully cultivated over years, was tarnished, perhaps irrevocably. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I sold our house, the one we had chosen together, filled with memories both sweet and bitter. I moved to a smaller apartment, a fresh start in a new neighborhood. I took up painting again, a passion I'd abandoned years ago. The pain lingered, a dull ache in my chest, but slowly, gradually, it began to recede, replaced by a sense of quiet resolve. I hadn't emerged unscathed, but I was stronger, more resilient. I'd faced the darkness, stared it down, and walked away. One rainy afternoon, months after the dust had settled, I was sitting in a coffee shop, sketching in my notebook, when I saw her. Amelia. She was sitting alone at a table near the window, her face pale and drawn, her eyes devoid of the usual sparkle. She looked older, wearier. Our eyes met. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the years of shared history hanging heavy in the air. Then she looked away, her gaze fixed on the rain-streaked window. I closed my notebook, paid for my coffee, and walked out. I didn't look back. There was nothing left to say. The story was over, and I was finally free.